I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, an incredible advocate, Marziyeh Amirizadeh. Marziyeh is an Iranian American who immigrated to the US after being sentenced to death by hanging in Iran for the crime of converting to Christianity. She endured months of mental and physical hardship and intense interrogation in Evin prison, one of the most brutal prisons in the world. And she has shared her inspiring story around the world to bring awareness about the ongoing human rights violations perpetrated against women and religious minorities in Iran. Marzi, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about, your experience, what you went through, kind of what you experienced firsthand that women are still experiencing today in Iran. Things that we don't hear about on the news.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for giving me this opportunity to share my story and what I witnessed firsthand living in Iran. I was born in Iran a few months before the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which started by college students who believed in Marxism, socialism, communism, and they were brainwashed by radical Muslims to support a fanatic Muslim, Khomeini, come to power. And since then, the Iranian people, especially women, lost all their rights. And it started exactly from a very young age, at the age of 7, for example, when a girl goes to school, they have to follow the Islamic rules, and they force them to compulsory hijab. I can share a little bit, briefly about the stories that I witnessed myself. For example, the first day of my school, I was beaten and insulted by the supervisor of the school just because of not covering all my hair under my scarf, and also laughing loudly in the yard of the school. And later in high school, I witnessed one of my classmates. She was dragged out of the class just because of doing her eyebrow. The supervisor of the school came to the class and dragged her out of the class, called her a whore because she was not allowed to touch her face before her marriage. So these are just 2 examples. There are many other stories and examples that I shared in both my books, Captive in Iran and A Love Journey with God, to explain how is the life of women living under the rules of radical Muslims and the Islamic Republic regime. And women systematically in Iran are getting suppressed, assaulted, and being abused sexually, and in different areas of the society, at schools. And later I was witness firsthand in prison, hearing many shocking stories what happened to women. And it was in 2009 that I myself with my friend, we were arrested just because of believing in Jesus, being a Christian. We were in prison for almost 9 months. We were sentenced to death by hanging. And I myself witnessed firsthand violence against women and how they were being tortured, beaten. And the first 14 days of my arrest, I was imprisoned in a small jail, which is underground dungeon. And it's the same jail, the same place that Mahsa Amini in 2022 were beaten brutally because of not having a proper Islamic hijab, which led to her death. And the regime murdered her simply because of not having a proper Islamic hijab. And I was in that same place in 2009. And I was witness how many women are getting arrested simply because of by morality police in the streets, just because of not following the Islamic rules, not having a proper Islamic hijab, wearing, colorful clothes, having nail polish, crazy reasons. And also, I heard tons of stories later in the public. Another prison, Evin prison, which they transferred me to that prison after being 14 days in that horrible jail. That it was honestly, I can't describe what kind of place was that. I shared a little bit in both my books, in my interviews, that it was like underground dungeon, just small, very small cells that they would lock women and beaten them up, tortured them, and they humiliated them. For example, they forced us to being naked right in front of their eyes a few times in different prisons, and pushing us, forcing us to do sit up many times, and just to humiliate us as women. And in Evin prison again, when I was there, I witnessed the rape, sexual violence against my cellmates. For example, they locked me for 40 days in 209 solitary cells, and I was with another girl. She was only 18 years old. And every time she would go for interrogation, she would come back in tears and shaking and too much fear because of being abused sexually. And she shared with me that her interrogator abused her verbally and by his behavior, and she had the fear of being raped in one of those interrogations, which every time I had to pray for her when she was when they were taking her for interrogation. And another story I can share, the story of Reyhaneh Jabbari, which is a prominent story all around the world. And there's a film about it, 7 Winters in Tehran. And Reyhaneh Jabbari, I met in person. She was a beautiful girl that was arrested at the age of 19. She was in prison for 7 years, and she was tortured, sexually abused for many years, and her crime was only to self-defense against her rapist, who was a part of the security intelligence in the government. And finally, after 7 years, they brutally executed her. Another story is one of my cellmates. She was in the public world. She shared with me she was working. She wanted to get a job in prison because she was poor. She didn't have anyone to support her. And finally, she was able to get a job in the clinic in prison. And after that, a few days after that, I could see how she was getting depressed. And I went to her and I asked her what's going on. You always wanted to get a job to support yourself. And she was all the time, she was crying in secret, and she shared with me a shocking story. And she said, Marzi, my job in that clinic is giving sex to IRGC commanders and the prison officials who are coming to prison to have meeting. And I was shocked to hear that. And she said she talked to prison authority and told her that she doesn't want to go back to the clinic, but they threatened her life and told her, if you resist and going back to clinic and sleeping there, if you share this with anyone, you will lose your life. And usually they target women like her that have nobody outside prison. They are poor, they don't have family member, and use them as sexual sex slave for their authorities. I was lucky because my friend and I, because our case got international attention and many people started advocating for us. That's why they didn't rape us, praise God, or sexually abuse us in that level that other prisoners shared with me. Another girl that I talked to her, she shared her story that for months she was another jail, and she shared that how they tortured her, and she lifted up her pants and showed me the mark of the cable all over her body. And she shared with me that many times they raped her in that jail before transferring to Evin prison. And my close friend Shirin Alamhuli was another example that she was tortured for months, for years in prison, and they kept her in another place, and for months they tortured her. They kicked her to her stomach, they hung her from a ceiling and beat her, they hit her head to the wall many times, and finally they executed her. And I strongly believe they raped her before her execution, because there is a fatwa by Ayatollah Khomeini that virgin girls must be raped before their execution, because they believe that if they execute a single woman, she will go to heaven. And by raping those women, they refuse for them to go to heaven. So there are many examples, and you yourself witness that kind of violence in Israel on October 7th, that how the proxies of the regime, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these terrorists are supported by the Islamic Republic regime, and they train the same way to other terrorists to treat women, and many Israeli women. We heard that you were another victims and witness to what happened in Israel on October 7th, that many women were raped and sexually abused by terrorists before taking their life. So this is the system of Islamic Republic regime, and they are keep doing that. And every day women are getting suppressed for different crazy reasons, and sexual abuse is a kind of tactic and tool against women to create fear and to control women to obey the Islamic rules. And there are many other areas that we can discuss about it, that the legal system of Iran is against women. Women do not have any rights, and they are discriminated against in everything. Their values, their inheritance, their witness in the court is half of men. They can't get a job like being in the court, important job in the government. And there are many things against women that we can discuss about each one of them. That, for example, if women ride a bicycle, they may get arrested and put in prison. There are rules against women, that they are not allowed to sing, they are not allowed to dance, they can't have the custody of their own children. For example, one of my friends, she got divorced, and it's been 7 years that her husband took the child, and she's suffering because she can't see her child. So these are just a few examples, and the life of Iranian women every day is in danger, and they try to threaten them. For example, for following the Islamic rules, another tactic that they use, throwing acid in the face of women who do not follow the Islamic rules. There are many Iranian women who their face ruined, their beauty was ruined by Basiges. And that way they try to create fear. And if women show their objections, participate in any protest against the regime, standing for their rights, they will get arrested, and they will put them in prison and torture them, rape them, and sexually abuse them. So this is something ongoing in Iran, and I urge the international community to stand with Iranian people who are fighting for their rights every day and empowering their voice. For example, that makes me very disappointed when I see that secular media and international community try to suppress the voice of people like me and many other victims. During the protests, for example, many women were shot in their eyes. They lost their eyes and their beauty. And the international community, instead of suppressing the voice of people like me and many other victims, we are not just victims, we are fighting against this Islamic Republic regime. And there are many other women as I shared a few examples, they have nobody. No one can share their stories. So the international community should support people like us to be a voice for those women who are suffering and who are fighting for their freedoms every day.